Hi there. In May 2005, I was invited to go on the Bill O'Reilly show to talk about counter-recruiting. I'm posting that show here so that you can learn from my mistakes. Now, in May 2005, recruiting was in a crisis all over the country because the war was a fraud, but also because of a series of scandals and demonstrations on campuses. Now, 4 million teens turn 18 every year in this country. About 250,000 more or less joins the military every year, so that's about 5% of the military-age population. There are over 20,000 high schools in the United States, and virtually none of them allow counter-recruiting on campus. So my goal in going on the Bill O'Reilly show was to promote counter-recruiting and to get more parents and schools to allow counter-recruiting on the campuses. My fundamental strategy at that time was to focus on teenagers' right to know and the information that they were lacking and their right to honest information, and to avoid the issue of the war itself, because we found that people would object to that and they would basically they could veto our presence on the campus. So did that strategy work? Have a look and see. Today in 2007, it's not necessary to do that. Your best strategy is to go right after the war itself, because the war is so unpopular. So Bill O'Reilly's goal here is to sell the war and to recruit teenagers on campus. So watch as we go into the lion's den.
Cable News, the O'Reilly Factor.
Thanks for staying with us at Bill O'Reilly. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, there's no question the U.S. military will have to expand to fight worldwide terrorism, but military recruiters are often given a hard time when they visit high schools and colleges. At San Francisco State, anti-military people turned out yesterday.
U.S. military out of our school! U.S. military out of our school! No war, no hate! Military out of state! No war, no hate! Military out of state! Fox News, me too! Fox News, me too! Check it out! Military gotta have it! Goodbye! Na na na! Na na na! Hey! Go President!
Joining us now from Seattle, Todd Boyle from the group Washington Truth in Recruiting, and from Palo Alto, California, Ruth Robertson, a member of the group Peninsula Raging Grannies, also an anti-recruiting group. Mrs. Robertson, we'll begin with you.
Hello.
You don't like the military, or what is your take on them?
You know, Bill, it's not, we support the troops. It's not that we don't like the military. We want our troops to come home in one piece, psychologically and mentally, and our hearts go out to the troops and their families.
All right, so you have nothing against the actual military, you just don't like them being deployed in Iraq. How about Afghanistan? Do you want them to come home from there? Come home from everywhere?
We want them to come home safely, and if we were to have money diverted to a more important cause, we think intelligence and the study of foreign languages, that kind of thing, is more important than military.
You would pull all U.S. military troops out of combat theater right now if you were in charge?
I personally would, but within our group, the Peninsula Raging Grannies, we have a variety of opinion on that.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Boyle? Are you against the military, or what's your take on it?
Well, thanks for inviting me to the show. I wanted to just put a little spin on what we do here in our high schools in around Seattle area, suburban area. We are not a full-spectrum peace group that has an answer for every international problem like that, and we regard the high school as not having a role for the national defense.
All right, so you don't want high school students to talk to any military people at all?
No, we don't interfere with those conversations, and we think that's a healthy thing, but we think that it's, in fact, the recruiters are required to be allowed by federal law under No Child Left Behind. And so what we're trying to do is to just get some precautionary information to make sure they understand, what they are getting into. We just ask questions like, take a witness when you speak with a recruiter, talk with veterans, do you know enough to enlist, these sorts of, this is the activity, okay. And so we mainly carry it on with the school boards.
Why are you doing this, though? Well, I mean, many of us believe that we need a robust military to protect us. We need to have high school and college students making commitments to the military. Why are you doing the opposite? Why are you trying to tell students, well, you might not want to do this? Why?
Well, that is a good question, and there's a it's important the people not to be confused between the two subjects of the national defense and how we arrange for that. and how we go about recruiting soldiers. For example, if kids are under 18 and they're minors and they're in a high school, and some of them are going to lack capacity, and some of them are going to lack sufficient information for an informed consent. And so there are some issues here that we find the right and left agree very much, and we're trying to just see if we don't need maybe an assembly once a year, a half hour.
You're dodging my question. I mean, look, we don't want anybody to be railroaded or go into the military if they don't want to. That's why we have a volunteer military service. But you, sir, seem to be a little bit anti going into the military. Am I wrong about that?
Well, that's not really for me to have that. I'm trying to take a professional approach.
All right, so you
to
don't
this,
want to answer. You don't want to answer that question whether you're anti. Well, let me ask you to.
Well, I'll give you my opinion.
No, I just need an answer. Are you anti-military or not?
No, I'm not.
Okay, Mrs. Robertson.
I'm not.
Now,
Yes.
when people see you trying to dissuade young Americans from defending their country, you understand, madam, that they may take a negative view of that. You understand that, madam, don't you?
Well, if they listened to what we were saying, they would understand that we're just asking students to be good consumers. Think carefully about all their options for career in military, and for other careers, for a lot of them think they're going to get a four-year college education out of this.
Do you have any grandchildren?
My son just married a lovely young woman,
right,
and
so
I'm looking forward to being a grandmother.
All right, good. Would you tell your grandson or daughter to enter the military? Would you do that?
I wouldn't tell them to enter or not enter. I'd tell them in any career path or any life-altering decision to be an informed consumer. And the fact of the matter is that we do know that military recruiters lie to students.
Oh, they lie. They lie to students.
Yes,
Can you give me an example?
So.
Can you give me an example of that?
Vets have come back from Iraq and said jobs they were promised and the kinds of jobs they were promised they would get.
Can you give me the name of the vet who's done that so I can check it out?
Sure. I can give you the name of Diane Raymond, R-E-J-M-A-N. She works with us. She is a counter-recruiter with us.
And she went into the military and they lied to her how?
She was led to believe that educational benefits would be greater than they were, that women would not be discriminated against in many ways.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is both of you, do you, Mr. Boyle, think you have a realistic view on the terror war? Do you see the threat from Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups against you and your family, sir? Do you see that threat? Do you feel it's real?
I think that's a major problem, and the elementary and secondary public schools is a place for developing our kids. I have a 17-year-old boy, and we're trying to develop healthy hearts and minds and bodies, and we do not have a primary responsibility for the national defense, nor for police.
You don't have a primary. Who doesn't have a primary responsibility for the national defense?
Hospitals, corporations, public schools, these are all institutions that have a social purpose, and the military is responsible for the national defense in this country.
Yeah, but if it can't recruit, we can't be defended, and that's the problem. Would you tell your son to go into the military? Would you advise it for him, Mr. Robertson? Mr. Boyle, I'm sorry?
No, I wouldn't recommend it because I am aware of other better career paths for his own self-interest.
But that's a little selfish. Shouldn't he defend his country if given the opportunity?
I feel... Well, do you feel that the national level is your highest unit of affiliation, your supreme unit, or do you think that it might be your community or your family?
Here's where I think both of you are going wrong. I feel that anyone entering the U.S. military at this point should be applauded and encouraged because they're making a great sacrifice to protect their country. Thank you both for being here.
Come down to the school board.
Thank you very much.
Come down to the school board.
Next.
Okay, welcome back from O'Reilly's Spin Zone. I'd give myself at best about a B- on that. I made way too many concessions to Bill O'Reilly. He asked me whether we try to interfere with the conversations between recruiters and the students. Of course we don't, because we can't. But like a dork, I said, no, we think those conversations are just fine. Duh. I should have said, at that moment, I should have asked Bill O'Reilly not interfere between the conversations between the parents and citizens and the students, because the students are entitled to hear both sides of the recruiter's story. O'Reilly also asked me whether I'm anti-military. Like a dork, I said no. I didn't want the conversation to be shifted off of the recruiters. I didn't want it to be shifted to me. But I should have insisted at that moment that recruiters are pro-military, and they have an even worse conflict of interest than the counter-recruiters. They're not interested in the student's best interest at all. They're paid full-time salesmen. So the lesson in this is, never make concessions on a right-wing talk show. In normal conversation, you get some consideration in return for politeness like that. But Bill O'Reilly just scoops up the poker chips, interrupts you before you can complete your thought, and then moves on to the next question. This is why it's so maddening for a lot of people, but you just have to understand how the rules work. So was my biggest failing the failure to be quick and nimble? Not at all. That's the wrong strategy on these shows. You can never be quick and nimble enough. O'Reilly has the advantage of hours of preparation. He's got a prepared script. This is a killing field. My final advice to you in going on the Bill O'Reilly show is this. Prepare a list of your key points. There should be at least 20 or 30 points that are essential. And you have to develop the very best wording that you can on these things and actually memorize them as sound bites before the program. You also have to brood on what to say in case there's a counter-attack or a question. Now, if you don't have your talking points worked out pretty good before the show, then don't go on the show. Each of your points has to be freestanding and independent and short enough to get in there. The studio will probably allow you to spread your talking points right out on the table there. Now, forget about delivering a coherent message on these shows, or their order of delivery. It isn't going to happen. Whatever Bill O'Reilly says, just absorb it completely and honor his intentions and the big picture of what he's trying to talk about. Start with the big picture of his question, restate or reflect his question for a maximum of 2 or 3 seconds. Do not concede or ratify his point. Just recite it neutrally. And then deliver a prepositional phrase or a connector to connect to one of your key points, and then it has to be the one that's fairly connected to Bill's question. And then deliver your key point just in a formal memorized version. Do not ad-lib your key points. Okay, at this point you've done a decent job of respecting Bill's question, and you've gotten one of your sound bites out to 5 or 10 million people. And because you kept up the pace, Bill would have to interrupt you quite rudely to prevent you from this strategy. Now, on one final point, Bill is delivering like a complete closed ideology that he's totally familiar with. Like Michael Medved or Rush Limbaugh, they are the master of their kingdoms. Guests are not allowed to attack Bill's universe. Now, you can do that, but you'll lose your chance to deliver your real message that you were invited on the show to deliver. So good luck on the Bill O'Reilly show. Thanks for listening.